Come in. Hi, James. So, hi, Brian. Are you good for chess? Yes. Welcome. We are Bereishit Rabba 12, number 2. On page Kuf Ayin Gimel. And I just thought I would print up the right. This is the technical term, the lectionary verse. So the lectionary verse, which is the notional beginning of the Torah reading and where we're headed, right? Eile toledot hashamayim v'haaretz behibaram. These are the traditions, the generations of the heavens and the earth. Behibaram. Let's just do a moment on Behibaram. Can we parse out Behibaram? What is the 3-letter root of Behibaram?
It's bara.
Bara, right?
Yeah. It's in a passive voice.
Well,
it looks like it.
Right. Okay. Well, let's do so far. We've dealt with, how many letters do we have here altogether? We've got 6 letters altogether. The bet, the resh, and the aleph are easy, right? The mem at the end is also easy. What? No, Behibaram. Otam. Yeah, good, right? So it is the third person, plural pronoun. So right, the direct object. So, their creation or the creation of them. Yeah. So far so good. The bet at the beginning is also fairly straightforward, right? These are the generations of the heaven and the earth in their creation. Which leaves us only with one letter to be slightly confused by, which, if the confusion is not significant enough already, is made even more confusing by the fact that it is written small. It is a diminutive hey. And I have no idea what to do with that. You wouldn't have the hay. Well, I mean, usually a hay with a hirik underneath it would be a sign of the hifil, but this is not hifil. No. If it was hifil, it would be hivram.
That would be hit by. I thought it's short for hit baram.
With a disappearing tuft, which does not happen in any grammatical construction that we know of, right? So it is.
Is that why you say small hay?
You can actually see it. You can see it on the handout.
In the Torah scroll, it's
and
written with a small hay.
You can see it, and you can.
Some letters in the Torah are written large, and some are written small. And this one's written small.
Yeah, let's see what. Since we've got this thing sitting on the shelf, look. I'm weighing this mighty tome. I might as well get it out one of these days.
That's weird.
So like this past week, the Yud in Pinchas was written small. And so it gives people lots of things to talk about.
Well, I mean, there's a Masoretic note here. There's a little dot that says, presumably that says that it's written small. I thought that might have a more pretty picture. It doesn't. But it's written with a small hay. So I don't really know what to do with that from a pshat sense, which means, what do you know? Right? Okay. So I just thought I would just start with that, and now let's go. Yeah, how do you feel about reading? No. All right, Lester, you're on.
Okay. Rabbi Pinchas b'shem Rabbi Levi Amar. Rabbi Pinchas said in the name of Rabbi Levi, Behi bara'am, the same verse. Behei bara'am.
Ah.
So it was. They were created with a hay.
Yes. With a. God created them, right? That's the. That's the. Well, right. So I think we've got two things in that. Sorry, can you understand the midrashic read of the grammar? That God created the generations of the heavens and the earth with a. Right, it's not a hey, it's a. It isn't. It is.
If you say so.
Right. I mean, So I mean, there are two things that I think are interesting about that. One of which is it is a pshat. It is a straightforward read that God created the heavens and the earth with an act of dibor, right? And then the little comment that we've got down here. If you can, I don't know if you can see where I am.
It's more like a sound.
Shehi kala lahigiyot mikol haotiot. God created the heavens and the earth with the easiest letter that it is to pronounce. Some might say that the aleph is an even easier letter to pronounce than the hey, but that would be splitting very fine hairs. But the whole act of creation, God found very, very
easy.
Yeah, I mean, so
it's rather. I mean, went to this lecture during the week about
someone.
He also pointed out something similar. How the Revelation text, how he revealed himself with a sound. And it's a similar.
Yeah. Good.
And how different people have interpreted that.
I mean, not to spoil the bat mitzvah Devar Torah that I've been working on with Summer Joseph, but she's getting right into all that kind of stuff, right? The relation, we talked about this before, that Devar meaning both a word and a thing, and that talking is creative. Hi, Milton. Sorry, would you mind grabbing a? So it's just a very good, very short midrash. And just a very good example of how the rabbis are capable of pulling off something which is really quite theologically subtle and sophisticated within the space of, 4 letters. I mean, it was incredibly tight. So, we have now entered into a world of how did God create the world, and how hard was it God create the world, and how is the world created, and yes, but we're not moving directly down that line. We are instead going to do what is called a gezerah shava. What's a gezerah shava?
Equivalence of two words that appear in two different places.
Good, right? So it's one of the classic hermeneutical tools. We actually do this at the beginning of services. We run through these kinds of various tools of exegesis. That if a word appears in one place and the same word appears in the other place, it must mean the same thing. Now, on one hand, that's perfectly acceptable philology. On the other hand, when the rabbis start doing it, they can do all kinds of slightly weird stuff, because they would use a word like, for example, et, which doesn't really mean anything, or here the word ele, which we would translate as meaning these are, which you would never imagine the appearance of these over here and these over here must mean the same these. But that's the kind of stuff that the rabbis will do fairly frequently. And here we have. We're going to be offered a series of gizrei shava. A gezer is a decree. It's a Yom Kippur word. Gazar dinam. Right? A gezerah shava. Shava is equivalence. Shava equal. So our lectionary verse: Eile toledot hashemayim v'haaretz.
I'll share it.
Yeah. All right. We've got a bit of Neoplatonism to look forward to, so I think I will keep on to hand, because I'll need to follow it carefully. I thought I did 6. How many of us are there? Are there any? Did we not do enough?
2, 3, 4,
5, 6. Yeah,
that's fine.
no.
Don't worry.
Okay, sorry. Okay. So Lester, we're going to do a gezerah shava.
So we're going to move straight to Isaiah.
Mm-hmm.
Kol eila yadi asata. All these my hand did.
Pause there, right? That's enough for us to get the gezerah shava. Eile toledot hashemayim v'haaretz, ve'et kol eile yadi asita. Right? So that when in Isaiah it says, and all of ding, 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 these, my hand did, the these that my hand did are the these which are the heavens and the earth.
Vayu kol eila ne'um Adonai.
Ah.
And all of these were the pleasure of God, or
no,
the beauty of...
No, spoken.
Oh.
And all of these were nu'umed by God. All of these were spoken into being by God.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a particularly sophisticated gezerah shava. It's actually just saying exactly the same thing that it says in Genesis. But now we have established the rule of the game that Eile means creation. we're just continuing in the verse from Isaiah. I've given you the verse from Isaiah on the sheet.
V'al zeh abit el ani unechei ruach v'chared al dvari. And to this I will look on a poor person,
Mm-hmm.
and I will arrange his soul, and he will
No,
fear
he
my
arranges
word.
his own soul. Somebody who is on this one, I will look upon on the poor person and the one who is working his soul and trembles before my word. Right, so that if you are, this is kind of classic wisdom stuff. That if you contemplate creation or God's word, which is creation because God spoke and the world was, you will become a contrite soul. You will be chared. You will be a chared. You will be, or as the Christians used it in the context of the Quakers, right? You know, that's that's someone who looks upon the world and goes, Gewalt, you know, woo!
Is that the origin of it? Quakers?
Yeah, Quakers.
Oh, yeah.
Quakers are.
Shake.
Yeah, I mean, you know, but this is it's just straight out of it's. You know, I mean, I think I don't know what a Quaker would say if I was to say to them what is the etymological origin of that. I suspect they would probably point to the translation of the word chared or pachad in the Torah as being quiver. No, not quiver. Quake. I'm not an expert on Christian etymology. Good. All right, so that's the rule established. The Eileh is Eileh, and Eileh is speech, and Eileh is speech.
And they all refer to creation
And they
and
all refer to
speech.
creation. Yeah. So now we're going to have another go at this.
Amar Rabbi Yehuda b'shem Rabbi Simon. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Simon, Lo ba'amal, v'lo b'yegiya, bara HaKadosh Baruch Hu et olamo. God did not create his world neither with evil, no, amal is
Hard work.
hard work, or touching, yegiya?
Tiringness.
So he didn't work very hard and didn't get tired out when he created the world. Now how do we know this? Shne'emar v'et kol eila yadi asata. But my hand did it, or?
Yeah, all of these. Yeah, I mean, in a straightforward sense. That's the continuation of this. Of this verse in Isaiah. We just get a little bit of verse in Isaiah. Sorry, actually, that belongs. That all belongs to the first Gezerah Shabbat. So now we go for the second Gezerah Shabbat.
Okay, Rabbi Yudin Amar, Rabbi B'schut HaTorah. Rabbi Yudin says that this, presumably this
The
Hibara'am,
the Eileh.
the Eileh,
We're drushing the Eileh.
refers to the not glory, the zechus of the Torah.
It's translating their zechut quite accurately as the schus. Merit is the usual translation for those of us who don't speak fluent Yeshivish. Yes.
And he quotes a verse from Leviticus, Eila hachukim b'hamishpatim b'hatorot asher nasan Adonai beinu u'bein bein Israel b'har Sinai b'yad Moshe.
Ah.
So this, I believe, comes at the very end of Leviticus, toward,
Mm-hmm.
I think it may even be the last verse, I'm not sure, that these are the things, summarizing, these are the things, the pshat is, these are the things which
Well, these are the laws
the
and
laws
the behaviours and the teachings
instructions.
which God gave between God's self and the children of Israel on Mount Sinai by the hand of Moses. But what's really what Rabbi Yudan is pointing out here is that it's Eileh. Right? The creation is somehow tied into Revelation. Well, this is a very, very Jewish idea. And you'll see all kinds of things. That you have the Esem Marmarot, the 10 utterances of creation, matching the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 utterances on Sinai. And the whole purpose of creation is to get to Revelation. And so that kind of Jewish idea we had a bet din last week, and at the bet din we say to people there are two questions that you have to ask them. One is, do you believe in one God, which is a kind of a universalist idea, and the other one is, do you believe in the particularity of a Jewish relationship with God, articulated through Torah and mitzvot? So that you have, as Rosenzweig talks about, creation and revelation being two absolutely combined points, for what it's worth, on a triangle. Hi, Jen. Grab a chair. Sorry, you need to maybe come over beside me. Two combined points on on what will be a triangle. Great, good.
Okay, and Rabbi Yoshua bar Nechemia, another opinion, B'schut Hashvatim, in the merit of the tribes of Israel. Shne'emar, at the beginning of Exodus, Be'ele Shemot, B'nei Yisrael HaYordim Mitzrayma. These are the names of the children of Israel who went down to Egypt, and it lists all of Jacob's sons. Uchtiv, Vahiyu Kol Eilen, so going back to the quote from Isaiah, that these are the ones that are God's...
Right, so here we get a similar idea that the creation, the whole point of creation was the Shemot, that was the Shvatim, was the 17, the 12 tribes, the children of Israel. What we're kind of playing with, and we'll see it much more clearly in a moment, is the idea that creation is set in motion in Genesis 1, beginning Genesis 2, and then kind of it has a teleology, it has a purpose, it has a direction, and the direction of creation is to get to revelation, or the direction of creation is get towards revelation. So this is all kind of tied into what in later stuff becomes stuff about the chosenness of Israel, the specialness of Israel, the idea that the world is kind of heading in this sort of particular direction. I'm not so excited by that kind of theology. By the way, there is a terrific Israel Zangwill free download, or book on the nature of the chosenness of the children of Israel. I think he just does a really good job just sort of setting it in. Don't worry, everybody else, we don't think we're better than you. We all think all humans are created equally. But this midrash is perhaps not quite a part of that. It talks about the entire purpose of creation is to get to revelation in the children of Israel.
I mean, that would be very particularistic.
This is a very particularistic midrash. Yes, and it's a midrash which is training us to move from the universal into the particular. I mean, there are. I mean, when one learns the midrashim on something like, the laws of kashrut, you're getting stuck into the laws of kashrut. But when you're learning midrashim on verses like, Ele Toledos Shemayim B'Haaretz B'Hibaram, there's not much specificness. We'll get a lot of stuff about God being the king of all the world. But this kind of a midrash says no, this is a Jewish story. Does anyone know the first Rashi other than Leicester?
Which one was the bet?
No. Why start here? What's so special about the story of the creation of the world? Why don't we start with the first mitzvah? With the bit that is actually particular to Jewish existence. Which has this sort of, an answer which is given, which is a kind of classic answer. But here we're being trained to read the universal narrative of creation from a very kind of Jewish place. All right.
Not today, I'm a bit croaky.
You are a bit?
Yes. Sorry.
That's all right. Maybe you caught it from my son.
I don't know.
He lost his voice.
I've had it for...
Too much rock and roll.
Well, yes. I wish it was.
All right. Why don't I do this with Lester? You can come back later. Ele Toledot Hashemayim. So back into this verse. These are the generations of the heavens. Amar Rabbi Abahu Kol Makom Shne'amar Eile Pasal et Harishonim Ve'ele Mosif al Harishonim. So any time where you see the Hebrew word Eile, you are rejecting the stuff that went before. So if you had...
So these, not those. Or something
correct,
like that.
correct. Once there was, John, Eile, there was Peter, it means you prefer Peter to John, right? But if it says once there was Peter, Ve'ele, there was John, but it would have to be plural, like John and Sue and Claire and everybody else, means that you want both the thing that came before as well as the thing that came after. Does that make sense? It's just it's a fairly
No.
well it is. By the way, I mean, you know, Brian, I'm remembering your perfectly good question about vav meaning and but, right? You know, when you have the word ve'ele, it means and, but if you have the word ele, it means in alterity too. So it does mean but. So, you know, it's kind of still touching this idea, which is going to go right the way through, you know, biblical Hebrew. I was a second mention for Kami in the space of the last 3 minutes. He was very upset that he's just really, you know, as he's following along in the Hebrew, that every single verse seems to begin with and he's rather cross because, of course, his teachers have told him that you can't begin.
His teachers have told him what?
His English teachers have told him that you can't begin sentences with and, you know, and certainly not, you know, every single sentence. And it was like, well, yeah. So what we've just done is we've set up this question that when you get the word ele, you are pasal et harishonim. You are knocking back the thing that came before. So, kan shnema ele. So in this verse where it says ele, pasal et harishonim. Ma pasal. What are you knocking back? You are knocking back tohu v'vohu v'choshech. Tohu v'vohu, the emptiness and. By the way, you can't translate that. We talked about this before. Yeah, it's what's called a hapax legomenon. I'm not quite sure.
Wilter.
Yeah, usually, but actually untranslatable. Right? Before God created the world was tohu v'vohu. Now, if you are of a certain philosophical come theological disposition, the thing that was around before God turned up was nothing, right? As in the notion that God created ex nihilo from nothing. If you are of a other kind of philosophical theological disposition, the thing that was around before the nice God turned up was nastiness.
Was what?
Nastiness. Right? So Maimonides, and this by the way goes for conceptions of creation as well as why bad things happen. Maimonides is very, very explicit about this. Any bad thing that happens in the world is the absence of good, just as all darkness is the absence of light. Says Maimonides, there is no such thing as a reality of bad, evil, chaos. Yeah? It's only the absence of the good that comes in. He talks about privation. However, there is a completely different philosophy, which is that there are two competing forces in the world, the force of light and good and kindness and decency, and the force of bad and evil and chaos. And these two things knock up against one another, and the name for that philosophy, theology, is Gnosticism. So I've just brought you a bit of Gnosticism. So here you're right.
I've got it on here.
Great, good, lovely. So the real problem with Gnosticism, you'll see what the real problem with Gnosticism is. In trying to understand Gnosticism, I stole this from a church website. We face a serious problem. The fact that the church eradicated all traces of Gnosticism after wiping it out, we have little to go on, aside from what some of the church fathers said about it, with most of them being quite hostile to it, and for all we know, misrepresenting it. Right? So the problem is we have virtually nothing where somebody says, hi, I'm a Gnostic and I believe A, B, C, D, E. All we have are a bunch of ancient people like rabbis and church fathers who are both writing at the same kind of period, both saying, well, you know, any stupid fool who believes X, Y, and Z, you can't take them seriously at all. They're absolutely foolish. Now, you don't know when you only have that whether or not people who are Gnostics actually believe in X, Y, and Z. They might be believing in something different. Let me give you the best example that I can. In order to understand Labour Party manifesto, don't listen to what the Tories tell you the Labour Party manifesto is, right? You know, the Tories will tell you that the Labour Party manifesto is we're going to create money off a tree, billions of pounds to nationalise absolutely everything and X, Y and Z. And the Labour, so, on the one hand there will be elements of truth and, but you have to strip away the overlay. By the way, I would say entirely the same thing about what the Labour Party would say about the Conservative Party. It's not a party political point. But what we are dealing with is victors. Right? History gets written by the victors. So it's very difficult to work out what Gnosticism is. And by and large, you don't get a midrashim. You don't get people that even admit that there was such a thing. I think this is an interesting midrash because it seems to be Gnostic. Now, you need to have a certain understanding of Tohu V'Vohu V'Choshech in order to agree with me, but I think it's saying that it was Pasalat Rishonim, that there was something that existed, a thing that existed before God created the heavens and the earth. Do I need to translate the first verses of the Bible accurately? The first verses of the Bible are not accurately translated as in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. That is incorrect. The first verses of the Bible are accurately translated as at the beginning of the creation of the heaven and the earth previously having been tohu vavohu, God said, let there be light. Which is a completely, right, the King James completely, I want to say blew, but that's not correct. They didn't blow the translation.
Misinterpreted.
Yeah, they rubbed out the Gnostic threat of the original Hebrew. And this little midrash seems to preserve it, I think, very, very interestingly. It does seem that Gnosticism was kicking around and was a valid...
in the Persian Empire, that was a...
Well, the Persians were after... Yeah, exactly.
Not dualism.
Yeah. Dualism,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But it does look like Rabbi Abahu was a Gnostic. It does look... And it looks like the Torah itself is kind of Gnostic. I mean, what it looks like when you read the Bible is that there are multiple competing deities, of which our God is the most strong and capable of kicking all the other deities into submission. And also, there are chaotic forces that exist within the world, such as the Leviathan and various other things, that our God is capable of bashing into shape. But it doesn't look like the Torah is agnostic. I don't want to use the word agnostic because we hear that word differently, because that's what Maimonides has told us so clearly, that Judaism is entirely monotheistic and there is no other force other than God, and that any chaos is simply the privation of goodness. We've been sold. Maimonides, who has the best PR in the history of Judaism, has succeeded in brainwashing us all to think that Judaism, biblical Hebraic religion, has always been entirely agnostic, when actually, I don't think that's the case. A midrash like this is not the case, and I think a midrash like this is not the case because they're reading the Torah. And to come back, Gerald, to one of your very, very early points, which is they're just making it up. This doesn't strike me as made up. This strikes me as actually kind of a real call on a real
yes. What's being made up is using Eileh as a hook to hang this theology.
But you know where you want to go,
yes,
so
exactly.
you use whatever tool you
right.
can find.
But actually, what I think is happening, and I taught this at Leo Beck, and it was. I taught Midrash 101 or whatever they call it at Leo Beck, and I was going to make what I thought was quite a simple point, but ended up taking kind of 3/4 of an hour. Usually, we would say that there is the written Torah and there is the oral Torah, and that first there was the written Torah, and then later along came the oral Torah. Right? That's the usual thing that people would say. But actually, what I think is the reality is that there was an oral Torah which pre-existed the written Torah, and then you get the written Torah, and then you then get the later oral Torah reaching back into the earlier oral Torah, right? So I think the earlier oral Torah is Gnostic, and this Midrash reaches back into that earlier oral Torah to make explicit something which is slightly unclear in the Torah itself. I mean, this is also massively, deeply heretical.
What does the word mean? I mean, what Gnostic? I mean, what? Is it a Greek word? Or?
Yes, gnosis is knowledge.
It's knowledge, yes.
Yeah, gnosis is knowledge. Just to spend a little bit more time here, right? So our problems with Gnosticism is that we don't have very much at all. Most of the references to it are by the Church Fathers who treated it the same way that let me do this the other way around. The Labour Party treated the Conservative Party manifesto at the last election, right? Added to which, the Gnostics themselves did not put into writing stuff because they didn't really believe in material stuff. So they didn't write anything down. So the only bits that we have found from actual Gnostics are so elusive and so unclear, it's really hard to work out what they actually felt. They just didn't believe in writing stuff down, much in the same way that the Kabbalists didn't believe in writing
Anything you
stuff
say
down.
will be taken down and used in evidence against you.
Right, well, partly that, but also partly because they didn't believe in materialness. Right, Jews do tend to believe in materialness because we believe that materialness is all created by the very good God. But if you believe that the materialness is kind of part of the battle between the good and the bad, you move into the spiritual realm of good side in order to say anything good, but you don't write it down because the minute you write it down it gets contaminated. By the way, that's probably not untrue today. That very good advice that not everything that you think should be written down.
That's
right?
certainly true.
They're not fools.
But the church, on the other hand, does give a lot of time and effort to Satan as the other side of the good God.
And we do mention Satan in the liturgy.
No,
not really.
Well, I mean, it pops up in Job.
But that's
quite
the
seriously.
accuser. It's
He's a prosecutor.
So I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess.
Is there a difference? What I'm saying is there a big difference between talking about Satan and Gnosticism?
Right. So.
It doesn't look obvious that they're very different things.
So let me just replay what I think happened between Gerald and I. Right, when I read the Book of Job. Right. So do we know the opening of the Book of Job? The opening of the Book of Job. Satan says to God. God says to Satan, "Look at my wonderful Job. Isn't he a good boy?" And Satan says, "No, he's not. Trouble him a bit, and we'll see if he curses you." Hence the story of Job. Now, when I look at that. Or maybe not quite, but I think you can read that as a Gnostic battle between two equally matched heavenly forces. Right? Now, when Gerald says that Satan is just the accuser, what you're talking about is a kind of a low-level angel below God, whose job it is to, I suppose,
before the judge makes the prosecution's case.
Right, and no one would suggest that the presence of such a person is a threat to the judicial independence of an omnipotent judge. So, I'm not. I don't mean this in a sort of overly personal sense, but in some way, right, Gerald has drunk the Maimonidean Kool-Aid, right? He has accepted that all appearances of Satan in the entire kind of biblical corpus are of a kind of low-level sub-god thing, possibly missing the original idea. I mean, part of the issue with the Book of Job is that the Book of Job reads very, very similarly to 3 or 4 other ancient Near East texts that we have of competing gods fighting out whether or not one god's follower is or is not a good follower by punishing them.
You're just saying that the Torah is developing. It developed from an earlier source and eventually became far more monotheistic.
Yes,
because it wasn't in its earliest times.
Right. So,
of course, the verb l'satan, of course, appears in the story of Bilam, and when he finally sees the angel, and the word that is used, I came here to satan you.
Yeah, you're right. So that verb is a perfectly acceptable verb, right? It's a perfectly kosher verb at that point. So yes, I mean, I know I sometimes say this. The only thing that I would disagree with what you just said is with your use of the word just, right? You know, when you said, you know, I'm just saying that the Bible, the Hebrew religion is developing. You know, it's not just. You know, this is one of the things that is exciting to me.
They did develop.
Yeah, right. You know, by the way, everything that I've said for the last 15 minutes, you would never hear an Orthodox rabbi kind of teach.
You did develop. It came perfectly formed. It was given by God to Moses. What are you talking about?
Has it anything to do with the fact that Judaism is deeply not conceptual?
You know what? We're going to get into that in the next.
Okay.
Whether or not Judaism is Aristotelian or kind of deals with a kind of Neoplatonian sense of things, we're going to get into in the next midrash.
Okay.
You know, what's fun for me about studying this kind of stuff is suddenly finding this stuff before me. You know, this is what I'm just reading. Mark Shapiro's just got a new article out about is orthodoxy finally accepting documentary hypothesis, where he kind of starts off by talking about Louis. You know, Mark Shapiro is saying, you know, when I spoke to Louis maintained he was surprised to have the Orthodox go against him for what he was saying, because he knew all these kinds of sources, so that when Louis was saying, well, it's developed, it's changed, it's moved to become more X, less Y, like Louis just thought, well, you know, how do you
it's
read
obvious.
How do you read, you know, like, oh, there's this one, and there's that one, and this one, and that one, and the other one. Like, what is it about the Orthodox that they just don't see those kinds of things? I mean, you know, it is, I suspect, entirely possible for somebody, I mean, you know, I can easily see how in a more Orthodox environment, and not an environment less aware of what Gnosticism was about, I can easily see that midrash would have taken 10 seconds to go through, and they'd have been done. Because they just would not have seen.
Of course,
he's
just explaining what Ayla means.
Yeah, just saying that it got rid of the Tohu and Bohu.
So, I think it's really interesting. All right, that was my go. Let's do back on.
Okay. Number 4, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemiah. Obviously, there's a difference between the two of them.
Good.
Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Vayechulu Hashemayim v'ha'aretz, Bizmanan, v'chol tzva'am bizmanan. So the finishing of the heavens and the earth was done in their time, and the hosts, called tzva'am, was done in their time.
So
presumably they were not done at the same time.
Good. Good. Let me use a term which is used in halacha, specifically, you know, certainly in the halacha of Shabbat, of Av and Toledah. Av, daddy, Toledah, from the root Yeled, child. That there was an Av, and then there was a Toledah. You know, so Vayechulu Hashemayim v'ha'aretz bizmanam. God made the heavens and the earth, and then everything that came from it sort of kind of came later. We're going to get into this nature of matter, conceptions of matter within Judaism. Okay, so that's one idea.
Omar le Rabbi Nechemiah. So Rabbi Nechemiah obviously feels differently. V'ha kativ eile toldot hashamayim v'ha'aretz b'hi bara'am.
That's
the
not an
verse
answer.
that we talked about it. Melamed shebo vayom nivru bo
b'yom nivra'u.
Bo b'yom hotziu tolado. So he thinks that everything was created at the same time. Is that
both the Av and the Toledah.
Yeah.
Right? Both the kind of the main thing and the second thing. Let's keep going.
Omar lo. So presumably this is Rabbi Yehuda coming back to him.
Yep.
Saying, no, you're not right. V'ha kativ vayhi erev vayhi voker yom echad. Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, Yom Revi. So at the end of each day of creation, it says, and it was evening and it was morning the first day, and so on.
Wait, right, so it says, hang on, that God made this on day 1, and then on day 2, and the second day, and the third day, and the fourth day, and the fifth day, and the sixth day. What do you mean that everything was all created in one go, both Av and Toledah, both the big thing and the things that would descend from it?
Well, wait a second. He was saying the Vayechulu Hashemayim V'ha'aretz, when it was all finished, was done in its time, and called Tzva'am.
Right. He's not translating as the end of the creation narrative. He's rather saying that God alled the heaven and the earth, and everything that came from it.
Okay, so
that's what the Midrashic translation of the verse Vayechulu Hashemayim v'ha'aretz is not the pshat when God had finished, or God then, at that point God had finished making all of the heavens and the earth and everything that came from it, but rather Vayechulu Hashemayim v'ha'aretz, God everythinged into existence the heavens and the earth and everything that came from it in one moment.
But that's not what Rabbi Yehuda says. Rabbi Yehuda said it was
correct.
Two different times.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's very different from the creation narrative and the Pentateuch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That we're going to say this is really an argument about Aristotelianism and Neoplatonism, which we will get into.
Okay, so the question is, he says it's obvious. It said this was created on the first day, this on the second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day. Amal Rabbi Nechemia, he comes back and say, "Kemilakte te'enim." So it's like one who is harvesting figs.
Bless you. Right.
Harvesting
figs. The figs are there on the tree already. So this is
Kol echad ve'echad hofia bismano. That I guess is he saying that some ripen a little bit earlier than others? Good. Pluck them when each one is ripe, and therefore.
But the fig is all there at the beginning. The figness of the fig exists before it is capable of being harvested. Yeah.
So what is he trying? So which side is he on? He's on the side of saying it's all been done at once, or
no. Yes, it's all been done at once, and it also is possible to say b'yom echad, b'yom sheni, b'yom shlishi, b'yom revi'i. Right. So he's squaring the circle. Right. He's saying that So the God created all the particularity of all matter in one single moment, and it kind of hung on the tree until the second, third, fourth, when the various different things kind of actuated came into the fullness of their reality, but their actual creative moment happened in one single thing. We'll do this in a second, but yeah.
Okay, Rabbi Berechia Al Hada Rabbi Nechemia Amar Al Hada. What does that mean?
Agreed with, or this is exactly the thing that Rabbi Nechemia said.
Vatotzei haaretz davar shehaya pakud biyadeha. So when it says, and the earth brought forth desha, I think.
Yeah. Good. Right. So when the earth came, when the grass, we created the earth on day right, and day 1, and then on day 4, on day 3, when the trees and the grass started coming out. Just the last 4 words here.
Shahaya pakud biyadeha.
Well, Totzi haaretz, what came out of the earth? A devar which was
already
in the earth's hand. Right? The when the grass came up, it wasn't a creation ex nihilo. The grass was in a kind of pre-form. This is why I'm not really answering your question.
No.
But what we are dealing with is the nature of creation of matter. And we looked a little bit about this, but it just felt to me as I was reading this that this is much more kind of engaging with philosophic currents of thought of its time than we had when we were dealing with Genesis 1. When we were dealing with Genesis 1, we seemed to spend a lot more time proving that God was in charge of everything. Right? That seemed to be the sort of major theme that we were just sort of continually circling around. Here we've got quite a lot of stuff about the nature of creation and the relationship of stuff to pre-stuff. Listen,
I'm not quite sure. Thinking of it in evolutionary terms, is he saying that, for example, that man existed at the moment of creation, but in the form of a nematode or whatever it is, and it was therefore foreseen or incorporated in the first life that it would evolve in this way? Or is he saying that actually man was actually there and then suddenly it was revealed? I'm not really quite...
I would like to say that this is a kind of pro-evolutionary midrash, but I don't think I have anything to hold my hat on. I think that the way that there's a terrific article on evolution in Torah Shlema, which I adore. But the big problem for evolution was not how old the dinosaur bones. That was not a problem. The big problem for evolution within rabbinics in the whenever it was that period was that it suggested that one species moved into another species, because it says in the Torah very, very clearly min b'mina, right? That each of these species were different, and that was the heresy as far as the rabbis were concerned. And those rabbis who are okay with evolution, have to find a way of dealing with the problem of that heresy. So what I think it's saying is clearly the second thing, which was that the human was invested, and we did slightly touch up on this when we were in Bereishit 1, that the human was put as an unripe fig on the tree in the moment of the creation of the heavens and the earth, to be actuated fully only on the sixth day. And the nematode would have been...
In evolutionary terms, he wasn't activated on the sixth day. Other species were activated, and then he grew out of it.
Right.
So,
yes. I mean, the Torah says that God... I mean, the Torah is incredibly articulate about the creation of the human in an entirely different way from the creation of, say, for example, the precursor of hominid primate. But those of us who kind of, accept a fossil record and everything else just have to kind of shrug, I think, on that. But, I am a shrugger on that one. I'm not an apologist. Let's do some Aristotle. Sorry. Let me just finish off with this. Let me just finish off with the Gnostic thing, because I want a bit of Gnosticism. I might, right? So let me just do the last paragraph of the thing on Gnosticism. So that, and also, like, how many different forms of Gnosticism were there? There might have been hundreds. We're really, really struggling, but we've got this kind of Orphean community. So let's try this, right? Intrinsic to these Gnostic communities was a belief in a dualist universe made up of matter and light. Matter was bad, the purview of an evil god, gods or demons. Light was considered good, by nature the realm of the divine, that good being a solitary, aloof being. That god, that's the good god, was the divine unknowable, Hashem HaMeforash, right? The immeasurable, Ein Sof, etc., had created the universe, but lesser beings had corrupted it by meddling with matter, right? So that's one possibility. So, Aristotle. Aristotle argued that the world must have existed from eternity in his physics as follows. In Book 1, he argues that everything that comes into existence does so from a substratum. Therefore, if the underlying matter of the universe came into existence, it would come into existence from a substratum. But the nature of matter is precisely to be the substratum from which other things arise. Right? So what Aristotle is saying is that you have a pre-form, a substratum, or as the rabbis might say, a fig still ripening on the tree. And then when it comes into form, when the fig is plucked, it becomes the thing. Right? So that there is a pre-step towards the material, which is not fully material, but is also not nothing. That's what Aristotle is saying. And what Rabbinic Judaism ends up saying is that the thing that was the first thing, the first cause, the unmoved mover, that's God. So, so when Aristotle argues that matter must be eternal because there is always a substratum, the Jewish response then is, the thing that came before is God. So, so in many ways, if astrophysics says, well, before the Big Bang, there was a pre-thing that became the thing which then banged, we would Judaism is fine. So the Big Bang is it's the thing that was before that. So however far back you chase, the Maimonidean Aristotelian idea is that that's the God. So you just and at the point at which your language simply becomes meaningless, of saying it's just the thing which caused the thing which caused the thing which caused that's the realm of the divine. Whatever that thing is, that's what we are calling divine as Jews. So,
but Aristotle is saying that matter can only arise from matter.
Right.
That's his assumption, which has been proven to be nowadays not true. So
in some ways, it is only. I mean, people have died for this, but in some ways, it's only semiotic, right? And it just depends what you call the matter, right? If you call matter the thing which post-dates the beginning thing. Right, then you therefore find yourself believing in God and creation ex nihilo. If you call matter the thing which starts, which is present before the substratum chain begins, then you label yourself as not believing in an Aristotelian notion of God. But it's kind of semiotic.
And that would very much posits on the idea that's a belief in a personal God. If you wouldn't believe in a personal God, if it's a much more abstract form,
right?
Then you wouldn't.
Well, by the way, I'm not sure any of this has to do with personal God. I mean, we'll get it. We'll get into. I mean,
with either of these, with the first.
Correct. Let's just do a little bit of Neoplatonism. Neoplatonism. Sorry, right?
Neoplatonism.
Yeah, Neoplatonism. Thank you. I'm back on my sheet. Right, a modern term for a strand of Platonic philosophy that started with Plotinus in the 3rd century CE. So really, very contemporaneous with this material. Neoplatonic philosophy derives the whole of reality from a single principle, the one. Right, so that there was originally one thing, and that one thing split into two things. This next bit is a bit tricky, but let's try it. Harkening back, whether consciously or not, to the doctrine of Speusippus, the one is utterly transcendent and beyond being, and that from the one you get the dyad of course meaning two, is the first principle. Right, that the first thing that happens is you go from the totality of oneness of all stuff into a two-ness. Right? Before you get into the two-ness, the one is alone with itself. Does this sound like Jewish theology to you? Right?
Yes.
I mean, it sounds very much like Jewish
theology.
theology.
Yeah.
It's
unknown. What's the top line?
Ein Sof, right?
Yes,
or Keta, right? I mean, absolutely, right? And ineffable. I mean, these are all deeply kosher theological kind of ideas, right? The one does not act to produce a cosmos or spiritual order. Gerald, I'm entirely with you that what we're talking about is not personal God, right? But rather, we're much more of this sort of top of the Brian, absolutely top of the Sphirot, tree, but simply generates from itself effortlessly a power which is at once intellect and the object of contemplation of that intellect, dyad. That there is something for the other thing to think about. That's the first thingness. Plotinus suggests that the one subsists by thinking of itself as itself. So before, God contemplates God's godness. But when God dyads God's self, you get a contemplation of otherness, you get dyadness, you get the creation of particularity in what had previously been a monistic entity. Right? Intellect is the product of being, which is the very principle of expression or discursivity. I'm at the edge of my ability to handle Neoplatonism, but I am interested to see. What are people talking about on the street? There are these rabbis. We've seen a bunch of these rabbis with Greek names. What do they know? What do they learn? What are they studying? I don't think they. Sorry, let me rephrase this. They are not sitting in Greek academies going through Aristotle, but they're looking at what an academy looks like, thinking, why don't we build one like that? Oh, they've got the benches going up from the Baron Centre. Why don't we do either the same or different? So that they are aware of what's kind of going on, and they are and they are interested in this kind of idea. So here you have an idea. What does Judaism think as being matter? We are not Gnostic, right? We don't think that matter is bad and light is good, and those two things are in conflict. We're definitely not Gnostic. We are, however, and we're not Aristotelian in believing that all matter is that matter has always been in existence, because we put at the point at which we've disappeared, for want of a better term, up our posteriors, right? The point at which the language simply falls away, we're calling that God. And we're saying, okay, fine. But we do believe in this kind of notion of a substratum from which other stuff kind of descends. And we do believe that there is a primordial unity which at some point developed, I'll use the Platonic idea, the Neoplatonic idea, dyadness, two-ness, alterity, particularity. And from that descends all other forms of creation.
Or could it be just an attribute of the oneness, that the duality is an
Right.
attribute?
The God remains God, aloof of all of this. Right. The technical term for that is panentheist, and this is a huge issue. Panentheist, as I'm sure Brian, you remember, was one of Louis's favourite words. Louis described himself as a panentheist, which is to say, so a pantheist would say that the tree is God, and that my breath is God, and you are God. And a panentheist would say that God exists outside, almost like a kind of an envelope, and all creation happens inside the totality which is God. So God is kind of beyond all of creation, and I think that's a very kosher theology, and pantheism is not.
God has to be other.
Yeah.
At the period of the Greeks, and they were much discussing these matters in philosophical terms. Were rabbis discussing things in that form of philosophical terms?
Well,
that the Greeks could understand.
No, I will say no. Right? We have nothing in those kinds of terms. What we do have is this, right? And we also have a couple. Well, we have scraps of what are called Marseille Bereishit, right? It's sort of early Kabbalistic stuff. I'm thinking particularly of Sefer Yetzirah, which is held to be Tanaitic, right? So of the earliest centuries of the Common Era, where although the way in which it gets discussed is very, very capital J Jewish, right? That the Aleph connects to the Yud and it drops in the thing of the, and this letter connects to that letter. They are dealing with these kinds of ideas of substrata and figs on trees and all those kinds of things. Bless you. But we don't have proper philosophy in the way that a Greek would recognise as proper philosophy until you start getting down to people like Gaon and the person who really wrote that. Much later, and those people were attacked. Maimonides' Mishnah Torah was burnt, partly because he didn't include his footnotes. But my goodness, you're not going to burn a book with his footnotes. But really because he just seemed too interested in writing philosophy as philosophy. Whereas Jews had never written philosophy as philosophy, they had simply done Midrash.
Treat it as anathemised, don't they? I mean,
philosophy.
No, Maimonides.
No, some bits of Maimonides they do adore, actually.
Well, it must be very particular. The remarks I've normally heard from Dayanim. Really,
you would not find a Dayan to be rude about Maimonides.
I've heard one of them.
Really?
I've heard one of them just talk about he's not sound. Don't read that rubbish sort of thing. Don't follow that. He's not sound.
In my experience,
between the Mishnah Torah and the Moreh Nevuchim, and the Moreh Nevuchim is looked upon with horror, but Mishnah Torah
I'm not
is.
sure. That's very. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I've had these kind of conversations with my favourite Dayan. My favourite Dayan is not at all rude about the Moreh Nevuchim. I mean, he doesn't think that it's a sensible use of everybody's time because it is it's a very small number of people who it's designed for. But you won't get them pouring scorn on Moreh Nevuchim. I mean, you know, Maimonides won. You know, he wrote the Yigdal or whatever. You know, he set these principles of what kosher theology is, and he won. And he won. I'd come. Thank you very much. Confirming we're here. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. Tuesday the 13th of September. Would anybody like to go to Cambridge to have a look at the Geniza? Yes, I'm going to try and get that set up. For what it's worth.
Tuesday the 13th of September.
September.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I've got a bet in, so there wouldn't be. If you were to say that you wouldn't be planning on going because you wouldn't want to miss the Midrash class, I will be teaching the Midrash class on that date. But that's the date that that's the date that looks like happening. Let me just do. Yeah, I'm sure that's right. I think that's Teresa. Is that you, Teresa? Hi, Teresa.
Where do we stop?
Where do we stop? We are picking up again next time with number 5, 12.5.
I'm afraid.
Tuesday the 12th of September.
Oh, you're not right. Yeah, so we're here next Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday that we'll do something.
I might not be able to come on Tisha B'Av, so